Hey, everybody. Happy Wednesday.
Big show today. First, we're going to react to the reactions to Adam Neumann's funding news. Lots of reactions, meta reactions.
It's just infinity content. I'm sorry. Adam Neumann is infinity content. Then, though, we're going to have a little startup talk, like a little real or not real. We're talking about Boom Supersonic's deal with American Airlines to sell a bunch of really fast airplanes.
And then we're going to talk about Goodfellows, an amazing, heartwarming new startup that's been funded in India. I'll give you the backstory there.
Very sweet. And then, of course, we're going to wrap with Jason and his next edition of The Blueprint. It's going to be a great show.
It's going to be a great show.
Stick with us.
This Week in Startups is brought to you by WorkOS is a developer platform to make your app enterprise ready. With a few simple APIs, you can immediately add common enterprise features like single sign-on, multi-factor authentication, and more. Go to workos.com to learn how to make your app enterprise ready. Visa. Are you a small business owner? Did you know that Visa's online small business hub has tools, discounts, and resources to help you run your business? Learn more at visa.com/smallbusinesshub. And Brave is an internet privacy company on a mission to protect your personal info online. Download Brave today at brave.com/twist to browse faster, search privately, and so much more. All in a single click.
Hey, everybody. It's Wednesday. You made it. We're at the top of the mountain. You're listening to this. It's all downhill, right, Molly?
It is. It's going to be great. It's almost the weekend. It's summer here in the Bay Area. I know some of you are starting to have your pumpkin spice lattes and your big sweaters. We are in full summer attire in the Bay Area because summer starts August 15th.
Well, with global warming, it's like we all get to live in Mexico City. Anybody?
It's very temperate there.
Incredible. I feel like LA is turning into Mexico. In terms of temperature and climate.
Yeah.
San Francisco is turning into LA. Like we're having these heat waves that felt like when I lived in, Santa Monica, Brentwood.
Yeah.
And I think that means Mexico turns into the third circle of hell or something, like Burger. Like how hot is it going to get? Did you see the Austin temperatures?
No.
Texas and Mexico is the same thing, right? This is like the same.
It's pretty hot in Austin. Best
it was
case.
Over 100 degrees. If you were to look at the monthly chart of Austin, a lot of my friends who moved to Austin were like, how come nobody told me about this? I was like, they warned you 20 times. You did not listen.
That's what I'm talking about.
August in Austin, or just Texas.
August in Austin is
It's 100 degrees every day.
It's horrific. All right, let's do it. We got a good show today.
These topics have been so rich. And you and I are having too much fun.
Way too much fun.
Way too much fun. So Monday.
Love this job.
Monday, we talked about work from home for an hour.
Tuesday, that was just yesterday. Monday
was that yesterday? And Monday was Adam Neumann.
The full-on Adam Neumann news. Yesterday, we just batted around work from home for an hour.
It's literally, this is too much show.
Guys. It's work.
It's work. And then the funnier this gets, the more people show up for the live stream, which has been great, youtube.com/thisweekend. We're just getting 300 people live every day. It's pretty hilarious. And some of the jokes are only for the live audience. So if you're hearing this, you're hearing the podcast, but there's another half hour of shenanigans that you don't hear on the show that only for the noties in the live audience, youtube.com/thisweekend. Okay, but we have to start. We have such a full docket of news.
We really do.
That just keeps overflowing into the next day. But we have to do a roundup of the reactions to A16 giving Adam Neumann $350 million before he launches his company.
I mean, we're all familiar with the thing that happens on Twitter where there's an event and then a backlash to the event and then a backlash all the way back around, the Ouroboros cycle, where pretty soon the worm is just eating its own tail. And that is sort of what happened. The somewhat obvious, we had a lot of fun with this. Obviously, I think we also mentioned the fact that, yes, of course, it is patently unfair that this guy who committed all this chicanery then just lands a $350 million check when all kinds of founders are out here struggling to even get a meeting.
Yeah.
So that was sort of the expected and immediate response, right? As exemplified by this New York Post story which was, investor
Yeah, I got
slam.
reaggregated. So this is something that happens to like Bill Simmons and some other folks. Like you talk about something on your pod and then people reaggregate it. So the journalist reached out to me because I guess he had heard my rule, Jason's rule. If a company becomes worth $1 billion before it launches products, it's probably a fraud. And I don't think that actually applies here because the word probably is in Jason's rule, but I was like, oh my God, the New York Post. I haven't been in the New York Post in a long time. So I was like, what's the best quote I could give to the Post? And let me try to give them 2 or 3 of those. Because I know, as a former journalist, I know quote bait.
Yeah.
You've heard of link bait?
Yeah.
There's a level below, which is quote bait. And, it's like AKA sound bites. But read a couple of my quotes in here because I was just baiting this journalist. I was like, I'm just going to give this journalist like, the alley-oop pass for the clear dunk.
Yeah, and they took it, not surprisingly. After the story was published online, Calacanis responded to an email from the Post and said that he had faith in Neumann. Quote, if Adam opened a hot dog stand in Staten Island, I would invest, Calacanis said. I actually think he has an 80% chance of making this work since this is his revenge startup.
Okay, now let's break down my quote.
I mean,
this is how you make quote bait. Number 1, there's got to be collateral damage. So Staten Island's a collateral damage, right?
Yep.
So it's like, what's great collateral damage for people who have to read the New York Post? Well, there's people on the Staten Island ferry. There's people coming from Brooklyn and Queens, whatever. They're going into work. They pick up the Post like I used to. And, you're just zipping through it. So I had to take like a little collateral damage for Staten Island. And then like, hot dog stand is classic New York, right? So a hot dog stand in Staten Island is like the worst business I could think of it to have. Like, can you imagine you get that job? That's the worst job you could have is a hot dog stand, working on a hot dog stand.
It's social.
It kind of. Listen, it's not a dig to anybody, but it's not the best business in the world. Anyway, but then I gave them a term of art. Like terms of art, this is just another one. When you can make up a term of art, like revenge startup, it kind of, that's how memes work with words. So if you can, branding works that way.
Bless you. That was the most mansplaining particular sentence ever. That's how.
Well, I was doing it for the audience, but yeah, like how words work when you put them together.
If you put some words together
to make a new term,
a thought.
Yes, but you had one yesterday, like the quiet quitting.
Yeah,
was it quiet quitting?
I wish I made that up, but I did not make that.
So there's me and Molly. There's me and Molly. You see I'm working out, and you see Molly has grown.
That's actually
true. I'm 5'9". I'm like 5'8.5", but I say 5'9" sometimes. I round up.
I'm like 5'11.5", and I say 6 feet.
And you're like 6 foot. Yep. So this is me talking to Molly.
How words work.
How words work. Anyway, for people who are not watching the video, it's just a picture of a meme of a jacked guy who's bald and 3 feet shorter than a woman who looks like Heather Graham in a crop top with her hair blown out.
Oh, God.
So if Molly got extensions.
How words work.
Can somebody just take that picture and put this week in startups? We'll make it the album art.
The album art?
We should totally make it the album art for your 1 year anniversary.
I mean, I think we pretty much have to.
Anyway, so that was my joke about it. And there's the New York Post.
But yes, revenge startup is super evocative, and everyone is going to start using it. No doubt about it.
That's how you do it.
No doubt about it.
And then having a rule, heuristic is also bait. So people with heuristics, rules, yada, yada. See, Molly, a heuristic is
H-E-U-R-I.
Meanwhile, Molly's vocabulary, we have to do a vocabulary test. I guarantee you Molly's vocabulary is 30% higher than mine. Easily. All right.
However, as you may have heard on yesterday's show, I cannot do basic factors of 10 math. So
I do get you on the back of the envelope.
It all evens out.
So let's go through some of the other reactions.
Right, yeah. So there were lots of reactions to the reactions, of course. And so then you start to see, so the headline of that Post story was Investors Slam WeWork Founders, quote, disgusting comeback. And then you start to see, not surprisingly, the boomerang. And people start to defend the Neumann deal, including somewhat surprisingly, Sarah Lacey, who was, a long time, a big name tech journalist back when you and I were doing this, but is now doing other things, but said, I don't really get the confusion.
I think she's got a mom startup, she's
got a mom startup.
Women's group mom startup.
Yep, exactly. She did Pando Daily, and then now she's on this Chairman Me, which is like a mom startup thing. A friend of mine actually went to one of her retreats and
I heard
really enjoyed it.
I heard it's great, yeah. I think people need those mastermind kind of things, yeah.
Yeah, it's great. Anyway, but she wrote back and said, I don't get the confusion, or she wrote back, she tweeted a long thread saying, I don't get the confusion over the Marc Andreessen and Adam Neumann deal. She said, this is totally in keeping with how Marc has always invested and how Silicon Valley does. Housing, she writes, is a huge problem. Neumann has a track record of raising gargantuan funds and going after huge real estate issues. Marc likes funding huge, bold ideas. And she also points out there are scores of people who blew up and later built or delivered the biggest scores in Valley history. The investors who won are the ones who gave them a second chance, like, say, Sean Parker.
Of course.
Totally left for dead by all of Silicon Valley except for Peter Thiel, who he delivered Facebook to. And then she says Marc himself was someone who the world tried to write off after Netscape, make a poster child for the dot-com excesses. This is all making sense.
Yeah.
And then there's this kind of outlier tweet here about how, as for the Marc doesn't want high-density housing in his hood, he isn't particularly social. And he's also on the board of the world's largest social media company. I don't see how that's super relevant.
Okay, yeah. That's a hot take.
That's a hot take.
You don't have to agree with it. It's a hot take. You don't have to agree with it. But she's right. I mean, we try to make this point over and over again to people, and I think the way I said it yesterday was, if you're credibly audacious, past shenanigans are easily looked over. I'm working on like a Jason's second rule of startups or founders.
A heuristic.
So you have that first one, and then this is a second one that's like a corollary, which is, if you are credibly audacious, you've taken a company public, the company changed the world, company defined a category, whatever it is. Or even if you failed, but it was like audacious.
Became a noun. Like the Buffett rule, the Buffett investing rule. He's like, I don't really do tech, but if it's a noun, I'm into it, or a verb.
Sure. Yeah. I take it. You take an Uber,
like
or
Uber.
Yeah, you don't WeWork something, but you get a WeWork, right? So you would, if you said just get a WeWork,
a shorthand, it's like Kleenex.
A WeWork means an office share. So even if you got it at another place, it would still be a WeWork.
Right. So if it either becomes a verb or a noun shorthand, that's
correct. Take an
Uber. Big deal.
You DoorDashed it. You Googled it.
Big. Sarah Lacey also pointed out, as for the check size, do you know how much they have under management? See Quibi. It can totally blow up and not dent the fund. She said, I've been in the Valley since 99. I'm so sick of the groupthink covering it. We can be morally outraged all the time, whether the market is up or down. We can also look at business fundamentals. We can be intellectually honest about what we are critiquing and consistent.
Whoa. Whoa.
Yep.
That is
and then she was like,
interesting comments coming from Sarah, who has been quite I don't want to say it, but okay. Anyway, I would love to read these tweets, but she still got me blocked over Uber. So.
Oh, wah, wah.
Wah, wah. If you're building an enterprise app, you need to offer SSO. What is SSO? That's single sign-on. It is what it says it is. Basically, the ability for enterprise users to log into your app with their existing credentials. So if you work at a company, a big company, you know that they have an identity provider. And you say to yourself, well, I can build that myself. I can write all that code and put it into my app. That's fine, but that's hard. And you're going to be duplicating a bunch of work, just like you might want to do payments, but you don't want to duplicate all that work. And then you have to maintain all those integrations in your app with every single identity provider your customers might use, and new ones are coming out, the specs change, and then your login breaks, you don't know it's broken, yada, yada, yada. It is a ton of technical overhead. Well, this is why you need to check out WorkOS. It's basically Stripe for all those important enterprise features. You know how people wanted to put payments into their products and it was arduous and painful, and then Stripe came out and you just drop a little code snippet in and you're done? That's what WorkOS does. Simple API plugins that let you move faster, spend less time on developers, and you don't have to worry about maintaining all those integrations. They don't just have SSOs, they also have APIs for multi-factor authentication and much more. WorkOS.com is going to teach you how to do it. It's app enterprise ready, and if you want to learn more about their different integrations, just go to their podcast. It's the WorkOS podcast, workos.com/podcast, or just search for WorkOS podcast in your podcast player. Welcome to the This Week in Startups family, WorkOS.
But it was really interesting, and it was sort of interesting as the day went on and the couple of days to see
the 48 hours.
The 48 hours, exactly. And then really, I think one of the best tweets of all time, possibly Talia Goldberg tweeted.
This was good.
Really want to meet Adam Neumann and see if he can hypnotize me or if I'm too powerful, if I'm powerful enough to resist.
It's a great one. It's a great tweet. That's 10 of 10.
None of us are.
10 of 10. I would steal it.
I would steal that tweet. It's outstanding. And also, no one can. He's like Emperor Palpatine.
Shout out Talia. Give me another follow right now.
Never call me Adam Neumann. I will write a check. I can't be trusted.
I thought for the ladies out there, I would do a little meme tweet, a little joke. So here's my meme tweet. Because a lot of women, I mean, people were, the counter, Sarah Lacey's counter is to people who are like, oh my God, this is unfair. It says something about gender. It says something about whatever.
Well,
whiteness,
I mean,
gender,
again, we pointed this out. There are all these underrepresented founders, particularly women who can't even get a meeting. And this guy can get, $1 billion in total just by hypnotizing people.
So
I
anyway,
tweeted you on this one, actually. Yeah, go for it.
So I was just like, you know what this reminds me of? Like, can you imagine you're a female founder who had a meeting at A16Z this week with a male partner? Like, how does that meeting start?
Yeah.
And, if a woman did say, like, oh, yeah, congrats on the the Flow investment, they'd be like, Adam created an entire category and residential is ready to be disrupted. And you can see here, this is the meme of the woman who looks like Heather Graham.
Being yelled at by a short king with the arms the size of his own chest.
With a guy whose arm is literally bigger than his skull. I didn't know that was physically and anatomically possible. With a serious DevOps beard. That's the DevOps beard. And look, there it is. This week in startups, Jason Calacanis in Mollywood. Oh, it's classic. It's gonna stick. It's me mansplaining to Molly. Oh, if you guys can't see it, we just made a version of this.
As our new podcast art.
Yeah. And we need to make one of these with
Wednesday,
US Khaleesi.
We're having fun today.
We have to make one of these of you as Khaleesi and then me as another Game of Thrones character.
Oh my God, seriously. This is incredible.
This meme, I'm just going to the audience right now. If you can make a better meme than this, I'm sending you $100 worth of Liquid IV.
Yeah,
this meme is classic. Just have at it, folks. Can you just put out the This Week in Startups overlay, Nick, for people as a reply tweet to this? And you feel free to tweet this, but anyway, that was my.
This is unbelievable. That was good. I retweeted that one today. That was very funny.
Thank you. In seriousness, what is the proper contextualization framing that you put on this as a female capital allocator?
Yeah.
Looking at this, is it actually an issue of gender? Does it speak to some larger issue, or as Sarah's saying, hey, let's be intellectually honest. People who are mavericks get funding.
It's both.
It's both.
It's always both. And it's always going to be both, because there's not like some things that are sexist and some things that are not. All right. You sort of like think of these things as a condition. We're a sexist society with discrimination built in. Full stop. Right. Like from the beginning. Yeah. So there is always going to be some aspect of that. Adam Neumann got funded the first time. Right. For having a huge vision and being like a tall, handsome guy with great hair. Hair like a prince will get you,
he was a super amazing salesperson, right?
And he's a super amazing, he's the Emperor Palpatine of selling. Like, you cannot resist the guy.
He's literally got that Jedi mind trick down, but also,
exactly, it's all and.
It's always and, to your point. And what people forget is, so yes, he's being given like a huge swath of cash here before the product's even launched. That is like notable. So you have to work backwards. Okay, let's talk about his first company. Oh, Masa gave him.
It's a red flag.
It's a red flag. Masa gave him a huge amount of money. And that was like, whoa, how do we process this, right? But then you have to go backwards. Green Desk. The guy had a vision for shared office space. He had a failed startup, not failed. He had a middling project, Green Desk, that he barely owned because he had a partner on it. He wound up selling it to them, as you saw, and then creating WeWork. So he was a bootstrapping founder. He was the bootstrapper's bootstrapper.
Yeah.
So for people to look at him now and say, oh my God, it's a privilege issue. Sure, there's privilege. Nobody's going to say there's not privilege, it's not unfair, bias in the world. But this is not that. I don't think this is a privilege issue right here. He is somebody who started as a bootstrapper, built a credible company, It went off the rails with Masayoshi-san giving up absurd amounts of money, which said more about Masa than Adam. Mm-hmm. That was Masa. Adam Neumann was just like Fireball, and he just walked into like a gas refinery. Masa.
Right. That is very true.
It just was random.
Very true. And you guys did a great job talking about that on All In, about SoftBank finding itself in this position where it just had to not only deploy capital quickly, but a ton, an absurd amount of capital.
$2 billion
quickly.
A month.
And so you hand a toddler.
$2 billion a week.
Right. Like you hand a toddler like a machete and a flamethrower.
Yeah.
And like stuff gets destroyed and burned down.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
But then the question is Mark Masa now? Did he just hand the same, right? This is the thing we don't know is did he just hand the same toddler the same dangerous tools? And we have no idea. Like I more than one time have referenced that DealBook interview that Adam Neumann did with Andrew Ross Sorkin after We Crashed came out, where he sold us all. Like we all watched that interview and we're like, I unironically would give him money again. There's no doubt about it. And there's and I want to be super clear, there is no indication whatsoever in that interview that he learned any lessons at all.
No, it wasn't like a super remorseful thing. No,
I still was like, that guy is as charming as a literal cobra snake charmer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
If he like literally came and said, I've got an idea for mobile hot dog delivery. It's a stand, you push it and you can order a hot dog over an app and they'll put sauerkraut on it. They'll put onions on it, mustard, whatever you want. And we're only delivering on Highland Boulevard. We're all in. And our second location is going to be on the Staten Island Ferry. So it's incredible brand extension.
Like, does that erase all the other issues that there are? Those issues are true. They exist. Like women don't get funded enough and people of color and old people and all kinds of underrepresented founders. And also, this guy is a GD ninja.
Exactly. I think that's all the reactions we got, right?
Yeah.
Pretty good there. Yeah. It's pretty good reaction. So, you're not going to believe this, Molly. This is it's the power of the podcast. People are sending me leaks from inside of Flow. You're not going to believe this, but there's a brand extension coming. And they built a landing page for it. And somebody just tipped me off. I got it. Somebody sent it to my DMs. Check this out. Apparently, flowtequila.com is up. And you can sign up for updates. So go ahead and sign up. Sign me up there, jason@calicanis.com. Let's make sure I'm okay. Well, I'm going to get emails about flowtequila.com.
I can't wait for this to launch. Oh my goodness, a tequila club like I've always been waiting for.
Well, who knows? I mean, it's a Flow brand extension. But interesting, he liked to throw those camping
There's
parties.
There's a community around
and
tequila.
The raves and everything like that. This is a different person leaking from inside Newman's. This is two separate DMs. I mean, I suppose these could be same person, two different burner accounts. But look at this one's coming. There's another Flow brand extension coming. I can't believe it. And this one to me makes a lot of sense because you've got young people that have apartments. This makes a lot of sense to me, maybe more so than flowtequila.com. But flowrave.com is up and running. And I totally want to go to a Flow rave with Adam Neumann. So Flow raves are coming.
This is how good this guy is. He can bring raves back.
He's going to bring
single-handedly.
Raves back. But that a lot of people have asked him.
Flow rave. Did we pay for all these?
Don't ruin the bit. A lot of people have asked, like, what happens, to people, are they going to outgrow being part of the Flow brand? Mm-hmm. And the same leaker told me, like, not only Flow Rave and Flow Tequila, great brand extensions right on Adam Neumann's brand.
On brand, yeah. Mm-hmm.
This one's coming because he wants to do the full life cycle of this is the full life cycle of his customer base. You're going to be able to go to flowgrave.com. You'll be able to, from tequila to grave. From rave to grave. The Flow life experience. From rave to grave is their tagline. They said that's what they're working on as a tagline for Flow. From rave to grave.
They're just really, we're helping to float that trial balloon, I think. Rave to grave. Tell us what you think. Producers at thisweekinstartups.com. We'd love to know what you think about
maybe some interesting brand extensions coming soon.
Rave to grave.
We're beating this horse. And we'll continue to do so.
We will.
You can be certain. This is going to be chef's kiss for the year.
This is Christmas in August.
Are you a small business owner? Did you know that Visa's online small business hub has tools, discounts, and resources to help you run your business? So whether you're a business beginner or an entrepreneurial expert, find the solutions, tools, and tips you need to help take your business to the next level. Plus, if you have a Visa business credit card or debit card, you can get access to cardholder benefits like Visa Savings Edge, a savings program which can help you save on everyday business expenses like office essentials, travel, and more. When you enroll your Visa business card in Visa Savings Edge, you'll have access to valuable offers, which can help turn qualifying business purchases made with your enrolled Visa business card into savings for your business. Learn more at visa.com/small business hub. Once again, that's visa.com/small business hub. Visa, a network working for everyone.
Speaking of supersonic success, American Airlines. You'll understand this pun in a minute, and I apologize in advance. American Airlines is going to buy up to 20 commercial supersonic jets from aircraft maker and basically startup Boom Supersonic.
Yeah, they've been on the podcast. They were on episode 638, a mere 900 episodes ago. What a pace we're going at. Back in 2016. But, I hear their business is booming.
Hey-o.
Hey-ho.
It never gets old. Never, people.
To create an airplane company, a company that builds planes and call it Boom, is audacious. Continue. Just as an aside.
You make an excellent, if terrifying point. That is true.
Tragedy Airlines was taken. TragedyAirlines.com was already taken.
Shrieking descent. Too long. Via Reuters, this brings Boom's total order book to 130 jets, valued at $26 billion. American is actually the second U.S. airline to agree to purchase these jets. And remember, supersonic jets are the ones that can fly at 2 times the speed of today's fastest commercial aircraft. So they're not quite Concorde level speed, but they're incredibly fast. They can allegedly fly from Miami to London in under 5 hours, cutting the standard 9-hour flight time in half, which would be amazing. Overture is the name of the jet. And I'm
going to go ahead and say, name the company Overture. Drop the boom.
Yeah.
Drop the boom.
Sonic Boom.
I get it.
I mean,
but when
not to explain the science,
consumers hear boom,
you don't want to hear
when one of these things blow up, the New York Post is going to be like, boom,
right.
Goes boom. Like, planes blow up. Tragically, one of these will blow up. And then it's going to be meme central.
Whoopsie, airlines. Yeah, boom goes boom is bad. That's going to happen. That's really going to happen. So the Overture, let's just continue to refer to it as the Overture. That's a great idea. Has 4 engines, can carry 65 to 80 passengers, is designed to run on a more sustainable aviation fuel blend, and it looks cool as hell.
It is cool.
What is interesting about this too is, I have been annoying you about various electric plane companies here and there because it's like, it's so cool and you really want it to happen. But kudos to the makers of Overture for creating an airplane startup.
Yeah, really hard.
Yeah.
Any hardware is hard. And this is like as hard as hardware gets.
I mean, right? I would think so. It's
Rockets would be harder.
Rockets, yeah, pretty difficult. Evidently, Boom said the Overture is designed to be 75% less expensive than the Concorde for airlines to operate. So the cost of the ticket doesn't have to be high. So a Concorde ticket apparently was 30 times more expensive than an average ticket.
It was $5,000 each way in the 80s and 90s.
Right.
To go from New York to London. Of course, the issue was you could not fly these over land. And 2 of them, I think, blew up. Was the problem with the Concorde. One of them was because the wheels or something lit on fires, but I think there were 2 major accidents. Somebody will correct me on that. And you can't go over land because of that sonic boom.
Right.
And so Overture said they're going to try to make it less boomy. So I guess the concept was you could fly it over, if let's say you were flying from Austin, you could, I guess, fly non-supersonic speed. And then when you get over the water, you could turn it up.
I guess so. Right. I mean, they don't go as fast as the Concorde either way. So maybe it's just not as much of a sound.
Could be.
So the timeline is still, hardware is hard. We should say that these jets have been ordered, but the timeline is no joke. 2025 is when they're expected to come off the production line. 2026 is when they're expected to start test flights and will not, they're projecting they'll carry their first passengers not until 2029. And then evidently the deal has some conditions. So American Airlines agreed to buy these planes, but I think would not have to buy them if they don't deliver in time.
Yeah. And all of these letters of intent, LOIs, purchase orders, like if this company was going public, you remember the Nikola controversies, the one that was making the vans for Amazon that Amazon owned 10% of, like all of these letters have out clauses in them. Some of them are non-binding, the payment terms. So if you were looking at companies, if you're making a J trade on a public company or doing a private investment, you just want to know. But I say letters of intent are, totally, I don't even count them as any revenue.
Yeah.
They're usually just press releases, to be honest. And so I think that's what this is. I'm not meaning to be cynical, but I don't really give this any credence because you can back out of it. And it's just an option. Now, if they paid in full or it was an amount of money that was significant to the individual, then you can look at it differently. I'll give you 2 examples. With the Roadster, you had to pay upfront $150,000 and then wait 3 years for that Tesla Roadster.
Dang.
For the Model S, you had to pay in full $120,000 and wait 2 years or 3 years, whatever it was. And I have both of those. I have the Signature 60 and the Signature number 1. But then when they did the Model 3, I think it was $1,000.
I think so.
I think it was $1,000. I think for the Cybertruck was $500. So, the full, okay, that's non-refundable. You get the cash in the bank. If the company goes out, you lose your money. So if that was the case here, great. Then you look at, $1,000 on a $50,000 is 2%. So if these planes are going to cost $200 million each or whatever $100 million each, they're probably going to cost $200 million, maybe $200 million, I'm guessing. Private jets like top out at 50, 60, and then the, commercial jets are in that 200 range. It makes sense, right? You think about a 20-year lifespan of them, yada, yada, and what they could do and generate in revenue. If they received but 2%, the same as the Model 3, I would be super impressed by this.
Right.
Because 2% would be $4 million per jet. $4 million per jet, 100 jets ordered, $400 million in revenue. They may have collected that. I don't know. Maybe to get your reservation and be in line, you have to put down 2%, 3%. So there would be skin in the game and it would be non-refundable. So that's what the devils would be in the detail.
That's a good way to evaluate those types of deals when they come in the door too. Yeah.
Well, when we look at deals,
Nick, that is a great VC Sunday school topic.
Yeah. How to account for letters of intent, pre-orders, and Kickstarters.
Molly, do you see that that's big in the climate space?
Yes, because there's a lot of like big infrastructure hardware pitches, right? Like there's a desalination machine or an electric jet or a microgrid station for EV chargers, right? There's there's a million different things. And it's all like, we have an LOI for burjillions of dollars. The LOIs are always for burjillions.
It's a letter of nothing.
It's a technical term.
What I refer to them as, letters of nothing.
Burjillions.
Orders are orders. Letters of nothing are letters of nothing. I like orders with cash deposits. That makes sense. I think when you look at it, pre-orders are incredible validation because it means you have a customer who wants the product so badly, they're willing to give up their cash knowing there's a chance they won't get it back and they want to see you succeed, which is the entirety of Kickstarter, Indiegogo, and why I love meeting founders who have raised on those platforms. There are problems with those platforms. We'll talk about it when we do a VC Sunday School on this. But just back of the envelope math, they said Concorde tickets were like 30 times more, which makes sense. They were $5,000, so $10,000 for a round trip. And back then, flights were $200-$300, right? I think in the 90s, I think we'd pay $300 for a flight, $500 for a flight. So, it's 20 times 500 is 10,000 or so. And I think 5,000 was like the minimum a Concorde flight would be. So that kind of is directionally correct. Today, interestingly, ticket prices actually haven't gone up all that much with the exception of the bump in fuel costs recently because of the war in Ukraine. So today, 2019 flights were in domestic US were $359. Probably international is probably 50% more than that, say 500. And that's round trip. So 500 times 30 is 15,000. So I would say my guess is that Overture tickets are going to be, if they said it's going to be 75% less than 15K or 20K, I might put it at 20K. 75 less would be 5,000. I can't see these being less than 5,000 round trip. I would doubt that. It's got to be, I don't believe them. I don't believe their numbers. I think they're wrong or they're just being delusional. Yeah. I can't see these tickets going for less than $15,000 round trip.
Really?
Yeah. Because, just look, if you wanted, because these are all going to be business class tickets, by the way. There's no coach. There's no such thing as coach on these. It's all going to be one class and the class will be business. And so I would say right now, business class to London, New York, or Miami is going to be 10 to 20 grand business first class round trip. I don't think they're going to undercut it. I don't buy it. And I'm not sure about this jet fuel stuff being green. All right, everybody, listen, I love Brave. I've been using Brave for the last couple of months, and it is so much faster than any browser I've ever used. And it doesn't have all of those ads and trackers and creepy stuff happening on my computer. They really have 3 core products built into Brave. The core browser, which is tight, and it has all these great extensions that just work. They have the search engine, and they have a browser-native crypto wallet. Brave's browser has over 60 million users already and thousands of daily downloads. Plus, all of this is built on Chromium, which is the open source Chrome project. So you're going to feel pretty familiar with it. All your extensions from Chrome are going to work. But here's the best part. They're going to work like 2 or 3 times faster than in Chrome because they're not going to bog you down with all those ads. And I tell you something, the Chrome extensions are some of the worst offenders in terms of adding a bunch of trackers. You can import your bookmarks, your passwords, and settings from Chrome or any other browsers in just one click. So you're going to be off to the races day one. And it doesn't track your website visits, your searches, or your clicks. Producer Nick uses it, and he loves it. Rachel uses it. We all love having a browser that's fast. It's truly private and independent. Their search engine is independent. So download Brave today. Brave.com/twist to browse faster, search privately, and so much more, all in a single click. I guarantee you are going to love it. Brave.com/twist. When they say jet fuel stuff is green, I think it's
a lot of questions about sustainable.
Yeah, I think it's like 10%
sustainable,
less.
That's a word that's doing a lot of work in that sentence. Yeah, a lot of work.
Should we be producing these, Molly? Is this what the world needs? Is this ethical or moral to produce these? They're going to burn more fuel. This thing's going to burn much more fuel per person.
Would imagine it's going to burn much more fuel, yeah. And
it needs to go twice as fast.
Yeah. Like how much, like a Bugatti Veyron gets like a half a mile to the gallon going 200 miles an hour.
It's I think it's like every 10 or 20 miles per hour above like 65 you go is some significant percentage more.
Yeah.
Right? Because you have to rev the engine that much hotter and it takes much more energy. So I have a feeling this is unconscionable on a fuel spent per person basis.
Probably. And I think by 2029, you are actually going to see enough flight shaming. Like, I think that there's not even necessarily shaming, but incentives. Like, I think there's going to be significantly less flying because now we just bop around places without really thinking about it. And most of those, many of those trips are not necessary. Like, there's no reason I need to fly across the country,
go to
take a bunch of cabs to go to a dinner and come back. Yeah, exactly.
I've done it. I did it for the Knicks games, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, anybody practicing business or something at a high level or fun at a high level, which you practice, has done some version of this. And increasingly, I think that's going to start to be considered, socially unacceptable.
It already has. Flight shaming in Europe is a thing, and especially when you have a train system. So when I'm in Europe, I do like to take the trains only because I enjoy it. I find it pleasurable.
Love it.
So I just love going from like Pancras Station to Gare Nord, the channel thing from London to Paris. I just find that more fun. I'd rather do that for 3 or 4 hours, talk, have a coffee. And what I do is I go right to the dining car. I spend the whole time in the dining car. I'm that guy.
Lovely. Trains are
I go right to the dining car. I park. I'm keeping that table for the whole ride. Yeah. Not giving it up.
But yeah, I mean, the only reason you think you need to get from, Miami to London in 5 hours instead of 9 is because you think you have like a really important business meeting there. And by 2029, that's not going to be acceptable. And you're going to have VR meetings. Like, I hate to say it, but you are. And or Zoom. And it's just not.
Or you'll have high-speed trains
going to be
or
necessary.
Tunnels. And you'll have self-driving. So you put all that together. There's no reason for planes to fly in the Northeast corridor of the United States. You can take Excella, you can take all these trains. There is no reason for people to be flying from New York to DC to Boston. That whole corridor, if they just made the trains 50 miles per hour faster, which is easily doable, you could just throw away all the planes in that area. Can you imagine how many planes come out of the air if you did that?
Yeah.
And then now you do Europe. Yeah. Like, does there need to be any flights between London, Germany, France? Like, what? I'm not sure which countries
on the continent. The best. No, not really.
On the continent, and also that you think about there's mountains, but if you can get better tunneling technology, there's really no reason for it. Especially with high-speed trains. If you can get these trains all to 150 miles per hour, 250 miles per hour, you'd see what happens in China, and you see what happens in Japan.
Yep.
like just take the train. Like, why would you do anything else? It doesn't make any, and it just have to make the trains more dope. Like the train has to be more fun and just even more easy. Just keep making the trains easier
like subway level easy. None of that like buy a ticket and do the blah, 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 do the whole thing.
Why am I buying a ticket? Like it's just, you get a smartphone, you get on, they should just, you get on. I love the conductor system. I love the pass system, just swipe. I told you I ordered those bobas. I'm really loving the Apple Watch lifestyle of paying for things and just quickly going through like Clear, does at airports. Those things I think mean more to people than it's being underestimated how much those little accoutrements mean to people. If you upgraded the food on these trains, upgraded the seating and upgraded the Wi-Fi, train consumption would go way up.
Yeah.
Just make it high speed, put those, low Earth orbit satellite Starlinks on each train.
Yep.
This is why I think we should subsidize.
Some safety upgrades, for sure.
Subsidize trains, high-speed trains, and subsidize e-bikes are my two pet peeves. But yeah, I would like to know what Boom's, and I'm not like on the company or anything. I hope people don't take it that way. I do think there's a case for having this. I just don't think this should be the default. So that's why I was sort of teeing it up to you. Do you think it's moral, ethical? I like your answer. I think a lot of people are going to opt out when they find out how much fuel this burns. And then for other people, if you're a dignitary, if you're a CEO, if you're somebody who time is money, if it's the president of the United States, if it's a senator, a congressperson, a CEO, and like they just have a big schedule, or they play for a basketball team, or it's a musician. I actually look at those and I say, you know what? People were giving Katy Perry or somebody a hard time about their jet. I can't remember who it was. Taylor Swift. And I'm like, you know how much joy Taylor Swift brings people when she plays to a stadium? I'm fine with her burning 100 times as much jet fuel because she's flying to a stadium to make 30,000 people have a great night. It's totally fine. As opposed to those people going and schlepping to her backyard. Better to fly her there quick, in style, and let people have that joy. Just like having a basketball team go from place to place. The basketball teams wouldn't be able to do the thing that entertains us all, these cross-country flights to do, the Warriors versus the Bulls, whatever. That's why they used to play regionally, is because they were driving Greyhound buses. Right. Or taking commercial. So they would only play people in their own division. The Atlantic Division played the Atlantic Division over and over again. You'd be like, wow, I wonder what's going to happen when they play the Western Division, or Pacific, whatever, place. Okay. I guess we move on.
Yes. Congratulations.
Seems like it's going to work.
Congratulations to Boom.
Yeah.
It's going to work.
Change
Probably. Let's go.
Overture.
Should we do a super quick, happy startup of the day? We have a really happy
I would love to do one.
Startup of the day. This is just a freaking heart warmer. I saw this article in Bloomberg this morning. Are you familiar with Tata Group? Like Tata is the big car maker in India, among, I think, other things, this company. Ratan Tata is an Indian industrialist, and he just made, this is sort of like a Series A / startup of the day announcement, just made a seed investment into a startup that connects young people with senior citizens. Ratan Tata himself is 85 years old.
Okay.
And put this investment into this company that's called Goodfellows. And the goal of it is to promote intergenerational friendships. Basically, to connect seniors with recent graduates and allow them to, like, if you're the senior, then the graduates can accompany you on errands, do technology tutoring and assistance, visit the doctor, join you on walks, go to curated events. And Tata gave this quote and said, "You don't know what it's like to be lonely until you spend time alone wishing for companionship. You don't mind getting old until you get old and you find it's a difficult world."
It's a great startup idea. We actually had a startup doing similar thing, Papa.com. We had the founder on This Week in Startups at one point. And Papa.com does it here. And Papa gets insurance. They get reimbursed by insurance. So what Papa was doing is you don't have to bathe the person or, do some of those or, high-end stuff.
Right. It's not like caretaking necessarily.
You take them shopping. You have dinner with them. You play a board game. You do errands. And so Papa's been doing this. And companionship services, we were talking, Molly, before, like, what happens when these jobs go away? When did we were talking about that? Was that Monday
yesterday.
It was Monday.
Yesterday.
No, it was yesterday. Right. Monday was Adam Neumann, work from home. Remember I said, like, call support jobs, SDRs, designers, video editors, all of these jobs on the bottom half, let's say, of that category and increasing are going to be outsourced. So what do you do with all these people? And I said, well, there's entry-level jobs that are super important to have in society. This is the perfect one. You graduate from high school or college. You make $40 an hour, $30 an hour, hanging out with some dope, old lady, old guy,
accomplished person who can mentor you, or not,
or
but
tell
either
you
way,
stories.
You're going to learn, tell you stories. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you imagine they're telling you stories? Like if this was somebody who was 30 years old in the 60s, right? And they experienced the 60s as a 30-year-old, right? They got great memories. Or the 70s as a 30-year-old. Wow.
Yeah.
So they lived through each of those. They would be now, if you were 30 years old in 1960, you would add 60 years to that.
60 years. Yeah.
You would be 90.
You'd be 90. And you would have seen.
Or you'd be 80 if you experienced the 70s as a 30-year-old. Can you imagine their stories of like Boogie Night stories or like Woodstock stories or Vietnam era? Like, man, I would love to sit with somebody who was 85 years old and play checkers or whatever, go have a coffee. If I was in my 20s and get $30 an hour to do that?
This company was founded by a 30-year-old who says, actually, that the idea for the startup came from becoming friends with Ratan Tata. So Shantanu Naidu is the founder who manages Tata's family office, it sounds like, and startup investment portfolio. And they had this friendship. They just really had a great rapport. And then decided that this should be a company. And apparently it's also just a really interesting story about a like magnate that tons of people have never heard of. Ratan Tata.
Tata, people don't know this, but Tata produced a $2,000 car at one point. Now, I don't know if you want to drive in that car. I don't know it's like on much safety, but they were unbelievable and maybe one of the producers can find one of these Tata cars and what they cost in US dollars, but it was unbelievable what they were able to make. And then continuing today, I think they make some pretty amazing gas mileage cars.
Tata himself turned around the tradition-bound 168-year-old steel to Airlines group that his great-grandfather founded and then has turned into this kind of like investing star. He became an angel and he's backed over 50 startups, including the eyewear retailer Lenscart, digital payments brand Paytm, an electric vehicle startup, an online stock trading platform. He's like the best group of... Oh, yeah, there it is, the Tata Nano. I remember this car. It's just such an interesting story.
I wonder what that cost in USDs. I remember it was 3,000 or 4,000.
I think it was, yeah.
Oh, wow. Tata, the world's cheapest car, the Tata Group's Nano that sells for $2,500 in India, may find a place in the US garages. Tata Nano may come to the US a $5,000 price tag.
I mean...
That would be crazy.
That'd be crazy.
Oh, I guess they stopped making them. Or they're stopping to make them.
Anyway, it's a really nice startup of the day. Really nice.
Very
Love
nice.
it.
Isn't that amazing though that like an e-mountain bike costs 5 to 10 to 15 grand depending on which one you get. You can buy 2 Tatas or 3 Tata Nanos for the same price that seat 4 people.
Yeah. I mean,
pretty crazy. I think the way they did that was those cars, I could be wrong, somebody will fact check me, but there was a whole movement of taking scooter or engines from motorcycles, putting them in cars that were lightweight that are meant to go under 55 miles an hour, like almost like they're golf carts, but it is super heartwarming. I'm sorry.
It is super heartwarming. Jason's like, I just want to talk about the cars and the electric bikes. I'm like, dude, old people are getting friends.
It's heartwarming. Good job. Right. Good job. And shout out to Papa. Right.
Shout out to Papa. Up next on the show, because you think it's over, but it's not.
It's not.
Another edition of everyone's other favorite J Trades in the Blueprint, just like hits. You're just the hit maker.
There you go.
Up here.
This Week in Climate and VC Sunday School.
Killing it.
All right, everybody. Welcome back to the Blueprint. This is episode 6, part 6 of a 10-part quick hit miniseries. Can you believe we're now past the halfway mark? Amazing. I want to get right into it today. I want to talk about how to get ahead of trends, how to master future mediums. I get asked this all the time. How did you get in early on Twitter, twitter.com/Jason? How'd you get in early on zines in the 90s? How'd you get in early on the internet itself? How'd you get in early on blogging and sell Weblogs Inc. before most people even knew what blogs were? How'd you get in early on angel investing and syndicates? How'd you get in early on podcasting? I get this question all the time. And so I'm going to give you a couple frameworks here, just different ways to frame how you look at the world, right? So framing is critically important. If you look up behavioral psychology, organizational psychology, you'll find something called framing. It's a school of thought. It's a technique how you look at the world, right? So I like to talk to people about how they frame things. When you first look at something and you spot something very early, let's say it's TikTok, your friend tells you about it, Uber, DoorDash, Airbnb, Twitter, podcasting, pick a trend. Could be NFTs, right? Blockchain, Bitcoin. It's very easy to look at something and humans take a very pessimistic view early on. We're scared creatures. Why are we scared creatures? Why do we take a pessimistic view at the new? Well, we take a pessimistic view at the new for a reason. When you meet something new in nature and you're like, wow, look at that big furry thing. And then it shows you these giant fangs. You're like, oh, that's a mountain lion. The people who would run up and be like, oh, there's something new. Let's give it a hug, would get eaten. Or they would be like, let's try this piece of fruit. And it would be poisonous, right? So we're conservative. Being conservative in nature, in DNA, avoiding new things really does make you live longer. New thing might be a river that you come across. Somebody jumps in the river, they try to swim across it, alligator gets them. The tide gets them, boom. They just get pulled with the rush of the river and go off a 1,000-foot waterfall. You get the idea. So you have to retrain yourself to be an early adopter. And there's this, of course, chart that you see all the time, early adopters on one side, laggers on the other, and the majority, right? And there's like the faster majority and the slow majority of people when they adopt technology or trends. I like to, as an individual, look at these new trends, and instead of being scared of them, I like to be curious about them, right? And I like to look at them and say to myself, what if they work, right? And so you want to anticipate that these things that look like they're not going to work are going to become something big. And usually it takes 3, 4, 5 tries for something to actually stick. That's one thing I've learned in technology. So, we had things like 6 degrees of separation in the 90s. Then you had Friendster and MySpace. You had all these attempts at social networking. And it eventually got to MySpace, Friendster, and then this knockoff company called Facebook that just knocked off what Friendster was doing. If you look at the original designs, it looks pretty similar. But Friendster couldn't be kept up and running, and MySpace let people design their own pages like GeoCities did before that, which was another community. And GeoCities and MySpace looked sloppy and wasn't organized, so it was hard to get adoption. Long story short, those things basically were the precursors to what eventually became social networking. So if you were early to MySpace, but were cynical about Friendster and Facebook, you might have missed being an influencer or really leveraging social media and building companies in that space like Instagram or now even TikTok. If you take the time between when TikTok showed up and when 6 degrees was around, it's over 20 years actually. Or, when MySpace was around, you're talking about the 2005 era, 2006 era of social networking to now, it's coming on 20 years. And then you have TikTok show up. So things can still show up later on that become big. What I do when I see these things is I assume they're going to work. I assumed Twitter was going to work, and I just totally engaged it. I was the number 2 user on Twitter at one point in time. I kid you not, in the first year. It was Robert Scoble, myself, and then this Senator Barack Obama, who was running for president and was in the primaries and was wowing everybody in the primaries. And he also had nothing to lose, and so he early adopted. So you want to anticipate that changes are coming. You want to look at the early projects and have a very open mind. Now you're going to be like, oh, Jake Al, you've been so not open-minded to crypto. No, not true. I had Bitcoin and I wrote a story about Bitcoin when it was under $1. I was concerned about all the frauds going on. But, with all those frauds going on, that was different than me looking at the fundamental core technology and saying, hey, there's something interesting here. I still think there's some interesting things as in terms of more internet from it. So assume things are going to work. You don't want to give up on these new platforms. You want to be curious and investigate them. I did this a number of times. I told you about Twitter. I also did it with blogging and I did it with podcasting. When I started in podcasting, it was literally an iPod. And before I did, you would basically upload your MP3 file and then it would use a piece of software, which was called a pod catcher at the time, which would take a download on your desktop of an MP3 and put it into an album. It would hack the iPod and create an album called podcasting, and it would just put a file there. There were no RSS feeds, with all the fancy episode numbers and everything back then. The standard was very, very janky. But Dave Weiner created that standard, RSS in the 90s. Then they included audio links in it. Then the Apple iTunes Store began supporting it. And that's where you see that famous clip of me asking Steve Jobs about Apple's support of podcasting. We'll play that clip right now.
Will you be able to add any RSS feed or any podcast's RSS feed to iTunes, or is it only through the store?
Oh, you'll be able to add anything you want, completely open. We're just working with the open standards out there, yeah.
And will you help companies like ours sell podcasts, be an Audible? So if we wanted to sell a podcast through your service, would you help us do the fulfillment?
We're planning on having all the podcasts be free at first, but zing me an email with what you've got in mind, and we're open to anything.
Same email I always send it to you?
Yep.
Okay, you got it.
So I just believed in it. And with my friend Brian Alvey, when we did Weblogs Inc., I just believed in it early. And in fact, he was on the podcast recently. Some people say I sold Weblogs Inc. too early. Certainly, if I kept running it, it would have been worth more, but I needed the money then because I had no money. Somebody offered me a lot more money than it was worth at the time, so I had no choice but to take it. And nobody knew at that time that some crazy Swedish streaming service would then decide to go into podcasting, or that this crazy Swedish music streaming startup called Spotify would actually be anything and figure out streaming music. So all these weird things will happen. And in fact, I wrote a blog post. Here is that blog post. The blog post I wrote in 2015, after I had been podcasting for 6 or 7 years at that time, and previously I'd been doing streaming. We had real networks and we used to stream live radio shows. Anyway, I said Howard Stern should get out of satellite radio, just like he left terrestrial radio for satellite, SiriusXM, and he should go do a deal with Spotify or just start offering his subscription directly, or Apple should sign him up for iTunes and add this as a content offering. Well, 5 years later, Joe Rogan signed a $100 million deal, and a lot of people think Joe Rogan is the successor to Howard Stern in terms of doing long-form interviews. And certainly Joe Rogan has talked many times about how, he was a big influence. So that blog title was Howard Stern's Easy $1 Billion Payday, courtesy of Spotify or an app. And I'll just read you this little excerpt that I wrote because I think it is telling. It's time for Howard to leave satellite and go direct to consumers or join Spotify. Either of these will make him $1 billion. Here's what Howard 3.0 would look like. 1.0 was terrestrial, 2.0 was satellite. 1, Howard tapes his show at any time. No more waking up at 4 a.m. and worrying about not being able to take Beth to parties. That's his wife. If you want to start at 10 a.m. or 1 p.m. or 10 p.m., go for it. What I'm pointing out here is he wouldn't be tied to a schedule, right? And that's exactly what's appealing about podcasting. Howard tapes his show from anywhere at any time. Want to stay out in the Hamptons? Tape when you're in LA? Sure. Go set up a couple of microphones and just go. Howard famously built a studio in LA, or SiriusXM built one out there. He did some interviews, and then he now tapes from his basement at his Hamptons home because of COVID. So those two things have all come to pass, and Howard started doing shows later in the day, et cetera. 3, never have a boss. Howard could not have to negotiate with SiriusXM. 4, provide your entire catalog free or for subscribers on the internet. Okay, what is the archive of Joe Rogan worth? Joe Rogan tapes at any time. He does it from Texas. He does it from wherever he is. He can do it when he's on the road. And he's got this huge archive, which is what Spotify really wanted to get on there, right? They get that whole catalog, minus the ones that they felt were too spicy for some of their employees, I guess, or maybe sponsors who weren't happy with them. And then allow fans to remix and make clips from the archives and repost to your site. That last one is pretty interesting. Basically what people are doing now with our clips on TikTok and other places. So anyway, I did all that math, and I just said, in that piece, I said, Howard Stern could easily drive 1 million new subs for Spotify, which at $10 a month would generate $120 million a year, $560 million market cap increase. And so when I did that math, it actually follows exactly like the Joe Rogan math, almost to a scary amount, possibly, because they gave Joe Rogan, I believe, $200 million or something for a couple of years. And so this is how you can predict the future. You just assume it's going to work. And when you assume it's going to work, oh my Lord, do you seem clairvoyant? Because a lot of things work. Now, most things don't, but a lot of things do. And the benefit you get from believing in a platform early or believing in a technology early is you get to reap the rewards because you get to understand it and build before anybody else even knows what it is. Now, sometimes you can go off on a rabbit hunt. People who are in VR spent 30 years building VR experiences and they threw it all away. Nobody ever really used their technology, right? And to this day, VR is still minor. People who are in early on VR, though, this is what Zuckerberg is hoping. Maybe they become the standard and they reap the reward. And so all of that, when I was talking about Howard Stern, having subscribers possibly and podcasters driving subscriptions for a platform like Spotify, when I was talking about that, it's very interesting because it also put me on the road to appreciating other subscription businesses. We famously invested in com.com before anybody else believed in consumer subscriptions And they said, that's stupid. Who's going to pay money to buy meditation content you can get for free on YouTube? And they got millions of subscribers. And then we did Fitbod and Steezy, Tonebase, and Fluent Forever, and Musician. We found other reoccurring consumer subscriptions. And of course, that's led me to do J trading in Warner Brothers Discovery and Disney because of Disney Plus. I figured out early, just because of my use of podcasting, that subscriptions would be coming. And then it led to me investing in a bunch of companies. Now, I missed some. I passed on Masterclass. I didn't get an opportunity to invest in Strava, but I use Slopes for skiing. I use Zero for fasting. Consumer subscriptions have become amazing businesses. So what you might learn from getting in early on something is not just how it applies to that one company, but how it applies to all of business. Right, now there's a final word here. You're saying, hey, what about fads? What about things that fade? All right, let's think about the cost, the downside risk. Let's say you went all in on VR in the 90s, and it didn't become something. Well, you may have learned that hardware is really hard, and you may have learned that processors are not ready to do the fidelity, or screens are not ready to do the fidelity that is necessary for VR. So what do? Well, just like Steve Jobs, they presented him with the iPad first, and he's like, you know what, this touchscreen isn't very responsive, the battery life sucks. What if you made a small one and we made a phone first? And he famously said, phone, then iPad. Because if we wait to do the iPad in a couple of years, we'll have sold a bunch of these phones. We'll know how the touchscreen works. We'll get the battery life better. We'll get the processors will be faster. And then the iPad will be snappier. And anybody who used the original iPad, it didn't feel very snappy. Can you imagine if it was released 3 years earlier and had a bigger screen and more to process? Exactly. Now, and you look at NFTs right now. Do I think Bored Apes and this other NFTs are going to be around in 10 years? I don't. I actually think Bored Ape Club and all these other popular ones, I think they're probably going to be remembered as Beanie Babies. They'll trade for nothing. There'll be like some weird group of people who's really into them, like people are into Dungeons and Dragons or certain comic books or whatever. I don't think that those are actually going to be the winners. It's possible they were. Was this one like CryptoPunks? I think all of those will trend down as newer, better ones. So these ones will be the Friendster and the MySpace. Bored Apes, CryptoPunks, if you own them, I would sell half your position if you're up. If you can fractionalize it, or if you own two, sell one and bank that money. Because I think they go the way of, I'm not kidding, MySpace and Friendster, which is they'll be the precursor to some Facebook, Instagram, TikTok that's yet to come. Something more sophisticated with more features that's faster, better, and delights users more, has more utility in the world. Now, what does that mean for you? Well, part of understanding this is having played with those. So I used to play with all the social, products out there. Flickr, had friends, and, before, Facebook even existed. So you can learn a lot by playing with a fad and then apply it to the next one that arrives. Industry changing trends, they continue to repeat and rhyme. And so once you get into it, you have that flow. Just like Eminem can just rap, and when he just talks and raps sometimes. Like if you ever see that great Anderson Cooper 60 Minutes interview, you realize the guy has been rhyming words so often and been thinking about how to rhyme words that it's preternatural for him. It makes him really just understand the chessboard in a way that like a grandmaster does. And there are people who are so good at poker that they can just read what's happening in the situation 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10% better than anybody else at the table. Or some people, when they're playing chess, just kind of get a feel for it, right? It becomes intuitive. Well, what I hope for you is you start examining quote unquote fads, which are attempts to change the world, and you start looking at those trends and become good at spotting trends early, evaluating them, understanding them, being curious about them, investigating them, soaking in them, and then you'll just become so much more clever at spotting the next one and exploiting the next one. And that's really what I've made a career of, right? I've really just been able to understand these new mediums. Newsletters is what I didn't even bring up here. I've been doing newsletters since the 90s, and I figured out how newsletters work, and Inside.com is crushing it on newsletters. So I hope this helps. Hope you enjoyed the blueprint. All 10 parts will live at thisweekinstartups.com/the-blueprint, and we'll make short videos out of this. Hey, if you want to impress me, I'd love for some of you out there to take these TikToks and make me versions of them. If you make a great one, maybe I'll buy it from you on spec and put it on our YouTube channel. Or if you're a super fan, just do it because you want to and you want the shout out, whichever you prefer. I'm happy to pay for it. Or if you make a great one and it trends on TikTok or YouTube Shorts, I'm happy to shout you out or do you a favor. All right, everybody. See you next time. Bye-bye.